March 27th, Philadelphia Flyers fans woke up to the kind of headline that shakes a franchise. John Tortorella, the fiery, battle-tested coach who had become the face of the Flyers rebuild, was out. Fired. 9 games left, season already lost, and suddenly the man who demanded so much of his players was gone. But here's the thing. Tortorella has his own story to tell about the firing, about the misunderstood comments in Toronto, about what really happened behind closed doors with Danny Brière. And tonight, we're going to relive the end of last season, exactly how John Tortorella himself saw it. So stick around. The Flyers were spiraling, winless in 6 straight. The team had sunk to the basement of the Eastern Conference, barely hanging above the Buffalo Sabres. That's when the axe fell. On March 27th, John Tortorella was relieved of his duties. For most coaches, being fired after another disappointing stretch wouldn't be shocking. But for Torts, the timing was stunning. 9 games left, in the middle of a rebuild. He couldn't believe it. It was kind of weird for me, Torts said. Getting fired with 9 games left, he admitted. It really surprised me. Tortorella had seen firings before, but this one was different. The message was clear. His voice, his approach, his control over the locker room were no longer in sync with management's vision. As Tortorella told it later, this wasn't just about the losing streak. There were deeper issues. He and general manager Danny Brière weren't seeing eye to eye, particularly on discipline. For Torts, accountability is a non-negotiable. If a player isn't pulling his weight, he'll sit, whether it's a veteran or a rookie. But in a rebuild, discipline can get complicated. Management sometimes values development over punishment, and that's where the friction started. Tortorella said it outright. Danny and I did have some disagreements on discipline of a player. Had some disagreements the last few weeks of that season. He wouldn't name names. He didn't have to. The truth was clear. The Flyers' future and John Tortorella's old school ways were clashing. Just 2 days before his firing, the Flyers were humiliated by the Maple Leafs, a 7-2 beatdown. After the game, Tortorella dropped a line that exploded across the NHL. He said, "I'm not really into learning how to coach this type of season, where we're at right now." Reporters ran with it. Fans debated it. Critics accused him of quitting. For a coach built on fire and intensity, the words landed like a bomb. Was Tortorella admitting that he didn't care? Was he giving up? In reality, those words would become the most misunderstood of his career. After the dust settled, Tortorella tried to set the record straight. It wasn't that I didn't want to coach the Flyers. I loved coaching them. His point wasn't about quitting. It was about refusing to play out the string. Some coaches coast through the meaningless games, easing up when the playoffs are out of reach. Not Tortorella. He couldn't, and he wouldn't. "I don't know how to coach that way," he said, "and I don't want to learn." For him, backing off would have been disrespectful to the players who had sacrificed all year, to the grind they'd survived. He wasn't saying he was done. He was saying he couldn't change who he was. If there's one thing that came through in his words, it was respect. Respect for the Flyers roster, respect for what they endured. Tortorella said, "Do I think I should have got fired for it? No. But I have too much respect for those players to kick the hell out of them right to the bitter end." That was Torts in a nutshell. Hard as nails, but fiercely protective of his room. He admitted he wasn't coaching well at the end, not because he quit, but because he couldn't bring himself to keep pushing in meaningless battles. To him, that wasn't leadership. That was cruelty.
When you're on the ice, not a word really needs to be spoken. That was the beauty of being a Flyer.
I've played with a lot of great teams, a lot of great players, but that was the closest group of teammates I've ever played with.
In football, you need that quarterback to be special. In hockey, you need your goaltender to be special. And Kelly was just beginning to emerge as a player.
Kelly wanted so desperately to be a star in the NHL. It's what he wanted most.
Billy Lindbergh.
Thank you, Bernie.
By all accounts, Pelly was not a drinker.
He picked his spots carefully. He would drink, but to be impaired, intoxicated, very rare.
And then the next thing I know, all I seen was a white wall. I said, Pelly, there's a white wall. There's a white wall.
It was a horrific scene. The car was mangled.
The headlight in front of Pelly had to be back 3 feet from where it initially should have been.
I read an article, you almost got into the Porsche. Is that true?
Not really. Me and Murray Craven lived 3 blocks from the establishment, so we just walked home.
Catching the wall right here in this corner, it was devastating.
And he went into cardiac arrest, and CPR was started immediately.
Talked to the police. I asked him, I said, is he going to be okay? And the police officer said, he'll be lucky to live.
Police officer asked us if we had to identify a body. And I remember looking at Murray, and Murray goes, I can't do it. My gut was turning, and I didn't know what to do.
And he passed away when I was holding his hand. You know,
that moment?
That moment, yeah. And so we were destined to be a team.
Pelly, I don't blame you. I never blamed you. I wish I could take that day back. And so many people you've touched in your life miss you.
The Flyers weren't just losing, they were tearing it down again. For the 3rd straight year under Tortorella and the 5th straight overall, the Flyers are missing the playoffs. At the deadline, Brière once again sold off assets, focusing on the future instead of the present. For Torts, that was the right move. He said, it was the right thing to do by Danny. They're doing it the right way. And I was on board with that. But it wasn't easy. Not for him, not for his players, and not for the fans. Another year wasted, another grind without payoff. The frustration poured out in Toronto, and in Brière's eyes, that frustration may have made his coach expendable. The worst part for Tortorella wasn't the firing. It was the whispers that came afterward. He said he heard it directly. Other NHL coaches accused him of quitting on his team. That accusation burned. Did I quit on my team after those comments I made in Toronto? I haven't quit on a bleeping thing in my life, Torts said. Those comments were totally taken out of context. For a man whose entire reputation is built on fire, passion, and intensity, being branded a quitter was the ultimate insult. And that label, fair or not, became part of his Philadelphia exit. Tortorella's philosophy has never changed. Accountability, effort, sacrifice. That's the code he lives by. And it's what made him one of the NHL's most successful but polarizing head coaches. But that same philosophy became a wall in Philadelphia. I've seen teams be really good playing out a season when it means nothing, he said. You're relaxed? I've seen players play better. I've seen coaches. I don't want to be that guy, Tortorella said. Torts doesn't bend. He doesn't compromise. And in an organization embracing a long rebuild, his unyielding nature was both his strength and his downfall. Despite the bitter end, Tortorella made one thing clear. He's not done. Not by a long shot. Do I want to coach again? Yeah, he said. I miss it already. I miss preparing for camp. I miss the camaraderie of camp. Yeah, I want to coach. So we'll see what happens. At 67 years young, the fire still burns. He's chasing after another bench, another locker room, another chance to prove that his way still works in today's NHL. Whether that opportunity comes next season or further down the road, Tortorella won't fade quietly. So what's his legacy in Philadelphia? Well, it's complicated. 3 years, 0 playoff berths, but an identity restored. For the first time in years, the Flyers played with grit. They played with structure. They played like the Flyers again. No, Tortorella didn't deliver wins, but he delivered accountability. And when he left, it wasn't because he quit. It was because he couldn't be anyone other than John Tortorella. That's how his Flyers tenure ended, not with silence, but with controversy, fire, and one last misunderstood message. And that's the story of John Tortorella's Philadelphia Flyers exit. A firing that shocked the league, a coach who refused to compromise, and a message that was never meant to sound like quitting. So what do you think? Did Danny Brière make the right move cutting ties when he did? Or did the Flyers lose a coach who still had more to give? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the Philadelphia Flyers hockey. In the meantime, don't forget to keep it high, keep it wide. We'll see you next time on HW Hockey. Bye-bye.